You may think a bullet to the head would lead to a definite kill, but you'll be surprised at how these headshot victims manage to stay alive, especially number 2. Number 8. Patrick Ireland. The Columbine High School Massacre is one of the worst and most remembered school shootings in American history. Within less than an hour, 2 senior students murdered 12 students and 1 teacher, and injured many more before committing suicide. To this day, the massacre, along with other similar incidents, continues to spark debates over the issues of gun control, bullying, and violence in video games. Among those who survived the horrifying tragedy was Patrick Ireland, who was 17 at the time. Patrick was not only shot in the leg, but took 2 shotgun blasts to the head. Remaining conscious, he refused to bleed out on the classroom floor and crawled his way to safety. He eventually reached the 2nd-story window, which he managed to pull himself out of before being caught by a rescue team. He became known as the boy in the window after a photograph of him escaping from the window became widespread. When taken to surgery, it was found that the left hemisphere of his brain had been severed, including his language center, but surgeons managed to fix him, and Patrick continues to live with no cognitive impairment whatsoever. After graduating high school with a 4.0 GPA, he went into financial services and now enjoys a successful career with only a slight limp as a reminder of the tragedy. Number 7. Petra Anderson. Here's another story about a headshot victim surviving a mass shooting in America. The 2012 Aurora shooting that occurred during a midnight screening of The Dark Knight Rises surpassed the aforementioned Columbine High School massacre as the deadliest shooting in Colorado. As many as 12 people were killed and 70 injured, gunned down by lone assailant James Egan Holmes, who was later captured and sent to life imprisonment. Petra Anderson was 22 years old when she sat in the Colorado theater to watch Batman in action on the large screen. Half an hour into the film, smoke suddenly appeared from gas canisters thrown onto the floor, obscuring everyone's vision. Gunshots from several different firearms came afterwards, and Petra received multiple shotgun pellets on her body, including one that went up her nose into her brain. But she didn't go down with that and managed to somehow flee the scene under her own power before being given emergency treatment. At the hospital, doctors discovered that the young woman owed her survival to a rare brain anomaly she had, which had gone undiagnosed until then. It was a genetic defect that left her with a small area of fluid running from the front of her brain to the back. The buckshot had entered her head from the exact point of the defect and traveled through the fluid area, missing her brain matter. After the incident, Petra went on to pursue her dreams of becoming a music composer. Number 6. Malala Yousafzai. Malala Yousafzai began blogging for the BBC Urdu when she was just 11, detailing the hardships of living in the Taliban-controlled region of Swat Valley in Pakistan. For girls like her, seeking an education was a dangerous task, as the Taliban did not believe that women had such rights. On October 9, 2012, 15-year-old Malala boarded a bus to school. A Taliban gunman who noticed her asked for her name, then pointed his gun and fired 3 shots. One bullet hit her face on the left side and traveled along her skull until it settled in her shoulders. In the days that followed, she remained in critical condition. Her injuries were too severe for the local medical team to handle, so she was flown to a hospital in Birmingham, UK. Part of her skull had to be removed since her brain had swelled too much. Fortunately, Malala survived her ordeal with little scarring and with a renewed determination to change the world for the better. She has since become a major proponent for women's rights and received the 2014 Nobel Peace Prize at the age of 17, becoming the youngest ever Nobel Prize laureate. Number 5. Alistair McKinney. Sergeant Alistair McKinney of the 1st Battalion Royal Irish Regiment was on guard duty, patrolling the perimeter fence of his army base in Afghanistan in August 2005 when tragedy struck. A local enemy sniper from behind the hills took aim at McKinney and released a shot that hit him in the forehead above his left eye. The bullet went through his brain and exited above his right ear. Alistair fell unconscious immediately and went into a coma for weeks. When he woke up, he found himself lying on a bed in Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, UK. He had no recollection of the incident and did not remember the sensation of the bullet going through his head. Alistair had in fact received emergency treatment in Pakistan and was then flown to the UK for extensive neurosurgery. His survival was no short of a miracle, as hospital sources claimed that such injury had only a 0.1% survival rate. But Alistair's troubles were not over, as he struggled to fight an MRSA and TB infection, as well as a large cerebral abscess during his hospital stay. His rehabilitation process took years before he was able to get up on his 2 feet, and the left side vision of both his eyes is gone. Number 4. Darnell Mundy. Stories about little children getting their tiny hands on firearms and ending up hurting themselves and those around them are sadly quite common in the US. According to reports, at least 265 people were accidentally shot by kids in the year 2015 alone, with Darnell Mundy being one of them. However, Darnell's case is unique in that not only did the toddler shoot himself in the middle of the face, but he also managed to survive and recover from the horrific injury. On August 4th, 2015, 3-year-old Darnell went into his parents' bedroom in their home in Miami, Florida, looking for an iPad to play with. Out of all things, he stumbled upon a loaded 9mm handgun, held it in his arms, and pulled the trigger while looking into the barrel. His parents, who were just a few feet away, were shocked at the sound of a gunshot and to find their son lying in a pool of blood with a large wound at the center of his head. Darnell was rushed to the hospital, where doctors said it was a miracle that he was still alive. He spent 3 weeks in a coma and had a neurosurgeon remove a portion of his skull because of brain swelling. He recovered enough to be sent home within 3 months and slowly regained his speech and motor movements that were lost. His neurosurgeon mentioned that his young age was one of the reasons for his survival and recovery, as his brain still had a high degree of plasticity and was able to rewire itself to compensate for the damaged parts. Number 3. Stedman Bailey. American football player Stedman Bailey proved his toughness on November 24, 2015, when he survived not 1, but 2 gunshot wounds to the head. The wide receiver for the Los Angeles Rams was at that time serving a suspension period for substance abuse and was spending time with his family in Florida. While inside a car, unknown gunmen suddenly pulled up alongside them and opened fire. Both he and his cousin, who was driving, suffered heavy injuries and were rushed to the hospital. After a 6-hour operation, Bailey came out without any serious problems, despite 2 gunshot wounds to the head. He even began tweeting and signing autographs after regaining consciousness. However, his injuries forced him to be sidelined from actively playing in the NFL, as doctors were convinced that repeated head trauma would be too much for him. Bailey returned to the sports arena in mid-2016, serving a non-football role with his team. He later joined his alma mater, West Virginia University, as a student assistant coach. Number 2. Ben Smith. Ben Smith, a 28-year-old father of 2 from Hampshire, England, was shooting rabbits in May 2015 when his friend playfully pointed an air rifle at his head. Believing it to be empty, he pulled the trigger, only to release a 2.2 lead bullet into his friend's head. Although in shock, Ben amazingly did not feel any pain. He got up, staggered towards his car, and drove it 10 miles home with a bleeding bullet wound on his head. His wife found him at the front door in horrible condition and immediately called an ambulance. At the hospital, the bullet was discovered to be lodged in the fluid cavity in the middle of his brain, known as the third ventricle. Although he was at high risk of brain damage, doctors opted not to remove the bullet, as doing so would risk killing him. Although alive, Ben has since suffered multiple problems, including slurred speech, vision and hearing defects, and partial memory loss. He remained bedbound for over 3 months. With the bullet still lodged inside, Ben describes himself as a ticking time bomb, as the slightest head trauma could end his life. Unbelievably, the friend who shot him did not bother helping in any way, never visited, and only sent a text message saying sorry. Number 1. Jacob Miller. Out of all the wars and military interventions the U.S. has been involved in, none were as deadly as the one fought on its own soil, among its own people. The American Civil War resulted in the deaths of up to 800,000 people in total. Some were killed in action, some died from wounds and diseases, and some from accidents. Doctors were often forced to amputate limbs on the battlefield, and when soldiers were hit with musket balls in vital areas, it meant certain death in most cases. For that reason, Private Jacob Miller's bizarre story is one of legends. During the Battle of Chickamauga on September 19, 1863, the Union soldier was shot by a musket in the middle of his forehead, right between his eyes. Obviously, no one would expect him to survive such injury, and everyone left him for dead. But after a few hours, he regained consciousness, got up, and walked his way to safety using his rifle as a staff. Miller ended up living another 54 years, with a large hole in his forehead, which never really healed. The musket ball was removed 9 months after he was shot. A buckshot dropped out of the wound 17 years later, and 2 pieces of lead came out 31 years after. He experienced headaches for the rest of his life, but otherwise suffered no long-lasting effects. He also received a Medal of Honor for an act of bravery in a separate battle he partook in 4 months before he was shot in the head. Whether you are an arachnid enthusiast or someone suffering from arachnophobia, there is no denying the dangers that surround certain spider species. Here are 8 of the worst spider bites in the world.